Housing Resources. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Vincent. I'm Executive Director at Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, or KHRC. We are the state's housing arm, and we're excited to take some time this afternoon and talk about one of our newest programs and biggest programs that we've ever launched, recognizing the huge amount of need and the great amount of interest out there across the state from tenants and landlords for emergency rental assistance dollars. I understand that this particular presentation is going to be recorded so we can share it with other stakeholder groups. It's specifically being given to CASA of Wyandotte and Johnson counties, wonderful organizations that do great work and are committed partners. So we're pleased to acknowledge and thank them for the work that they do in their communities. But beyond that, it just takes so many good partners for this program to be the success that it is and has become. And we simply couldn't do it without great boots on the ground in organizations around the state, urban and rural areas alike. So thank you in advance for your interest, for your partnership, and certainly for continuing the success of KERA as we go forward. As far as the agenda itself today, we're going to be covering really kind of a variety of information. We're going to cover a high-level overview of KHRC, knowing that some of you may not be familiar with the work that we do, the people that we serve. We're going to talk about how home has never been the same and never been as important as it was and is during this time of pandemic. We're going to talk about the needs that we're seeing, and you'll hear about some of our successes responding to the pandemic in partnerships with groups and people like you. We're going to talk about some of our previous successes, and then I'm going to be turning it over to Jason Fizel, who leads our KERA program here at KHRC, and has been a committed leader to making sure that we get these important dollars out the door to those we serve. Finally, you'll be hearing from Blair Gordon at our office, who is our KERA communications coordinator, who's going to just go through a digital toolkit that we offer as a way of you helping us get the word out to your constituents and stakeholders. And finally, I believe we're going to be having some opportunity for questions at the end so that we can just talk and hopefully field your questions and ensure that you have the knowledge and information that you need. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the presentation itself. And it's really important that we always remember that we're talking about home. We know that, our team at KHRC knows that while we administer great programs, we have great tools that are available, we're ultimately talking about something that is sacred, and that's a person's home. And it's so important that we all work together to keep people in their homes. We've got a little short clip, I think it's about 2 minutes, that just kind of talks about the importance of home. So sit back and enjoy.
Dear house, through your doors is everything I love. Below your roof is everything I am. Your walls frame my life. Your table is the canvas for my autobiography. Every scratch shares a story. Every meal is a memory. You weren't built brick by brick. You were built moment by moment. In you, we can disagree, but not divide. You give us room for science and silence. Even during the worst, you bring out the best in me. Your purpose is shelter, but you provide me with so much more. Dear home, thank you for the celebrations, for the peace of mind, for the lessons. In you, I have learned, I have loved, I have lived. Kansas Housing Resources Corporation helps Kansans access the safe, affordable housing they need and the dignity they deserve.
So that's just a nice little reminder about the importance of home and why we all need to be working together to keep people stably housed so that they've got that hub that home provides us that connects us to so much more. Now, we'll kind of kick off just an overview of the work that we do at Kansas Housing. We are a public corporation, a nonprofit entity of government that administers a variety of housing and community programs across the state, rural and urban areas alike. Our mission is simple. We help Kansans access the safe, affordable housing they need and the dignity they deserve. Always like to highlight the word dignity. That's something that we very purposely chose to capture, that no matter what the person's housing needs are, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And that's something that our team really strives for through partnerships with great folks like you. As far as who we work with, everybody from realtors to bankers, community development professionals, developers themselves, and homeless advocates, and great nonprofits. If you live, breathe, do business in the state of Kansas or pay taxes, you are a stakeholder of Kansas housing. We administer programs that run the gamut, from funding homeless shelters to providing rental assistance. We've got important services like weatherization. We fund community action agencies. We regulate the installation and manufactured housing in the state. We also have administered a variety of emergency programs that you'll be hearing about today. And we're honored to do that work, but it certainly takes a village and a community. And that's why we're glad you're here today. So let's go to the next slide now. And we're just going to talk a little bit about how a pandemic, COVID, has changed life as we know it. And our homes have never been more important than they are right now. I think we all inherently know that homes are essential for shelter, for warmth, for community, for healthy neighborhoods and communities. But during this time of pandemic, this last 2 years has shown us that home is so much more. Home is where we work. Home is where we still have people schooling and learning and teaching. School is where we have a lot of our shopping in an internet-based age. Home is where we are accessing our online medical care and where we're worshiping through remote services. Home is where we're having our PTO and Girl Scouts and Cub Scouts and 4-H meetings. Home is the hub that connects us to the greater world. And when people are at risk of losing their home, they're at risk of so much more than just the shelter. And that's why programs and resources like the Emergency Rental Assistance Program you're going to learn about are so important. Let's just delve into a couple of numbers, though, to really capture a snapshot of what COVID has done. We can go to the next slide here. This actually specifically talks about the effect of the moratoriums. You're probably aware for the first year of the pandemic, there were moratoriums which kept people in their homes from being evicted because of the inability to pay rent due to a COVID hardship. There was also foreclosure moratoriums in place for a while, both at the state and federal level, and those were eventually lifted through late last summer. Those protections were vital for keeping that community stably housed. But at the same time, it had a huge effect, not just on our tenants, who still were having rent billed month after month, but our landlords, about 50% of which are small businesses who have mortgages and utilities and taxes of their own to pay. It was a collision course that our landlords and our tenants were on when they couldn't collect or pay rent, and yet they were at risk of losing their homes and their businesses. Fortunately, we have resources that we'll be talking about to address that. But I think the next slide actually has just a little bit more data itself. About a third of our state rent their homes. These numbers are starting to get a little stale, and I'd like to get a little updated numbers, but as of July of last year, there were about 27,000 households. So you can imagine how many total Kansans there were at risk of being evicted. That not only translated to a whole lot of harm and risk for our tenants, but a whole lot of back rent for our landlords. We project that was hitting about $275 million in last summer as our KERA program was really hitting its full stride. This number at the last really captures the decline in revenue that our landlords were facing and the increase in costs. Again, an unsustainable collision course for our small business landlords. Let's go to the next slide and just talk specifically now about some of the back rent that has accrued after the months of the eviction moratorium. You can see this particular chart from the Federal Reserve was just through June of 21, but it shows that amount of estimated back rent was huge, $275 million. And you can imagine the multiplier effect that had through not only our businesses, but our tax coffers, as we don't have those dollars flowing and multiplying throughout our economy. Beyond the business ramifications, it had a huge and disproportionate impact on our vulnerable populations in the state. The next slide specifically talks about the impact that COVID has had on our communities of color and on our low-income communities. Here's some just kind of a couple quotes. COVID has disproportionately impacted Kansas communities of color, which I think we generally know, but I think that's specific to Kansas data there. This is from the Federal Reserve study that just came out last summer. Specifically, it says people with low incomes and people of color also are more likely to be threatened with eviction because they're more likely to be renters. This graph here at the bottom shows just in yellow or orange, whatever color that is, for each community, it's showing the percentage of renters. So as you can see, with a higher percentage of renters for Black or Hispanic or other non-white populations, the risk that they faced of eviction was even greater, leading to that disproportionate impact that those communities of color were facing. Excuse me. So with that understanding, with that knowledge and the goals of ensuring equity and ensuring that these dollars are available to help those that need it the most, we're getting resources out the door incredibly quickly. Let's talk about KHRC's COVID response. And if we could go to the next slide, please. KHRC, since the pandemic hit, launched a number of programs with federal funding that was available. We provided $15 million to our emergency shelters. We were able to get $8 million to our community action network across the state. The fall of 2020, time's getting away from us, we launched our first large program, and that was a $20 million eviction prevention program called KEP. That program used federal CARES Act dollars that were available. We were able to create the program and launch it in about 6 weeks. And we were able to have remarkable success, which I believe the next slide will go into. And then that led to the much larger and expanded KERA program you'll be learning about, as well as a couple other initiatives. One that I might just highlight now is that we will be launching a homeowner assistance fund, or CAF program, which will provide mortgage, utility, and tax assistance for homeowners who are behind, similar to KERA that you'll be learning about soon. But if we can go to the next slide, we'll just talk about the very first program, and that was KEP. Again, it ran about 3 months. We were able to field about 10,000 applications from Kansas households during that time. We were able to get $17 million out the door, which we were so proud of because it was so new and we were launching and ramping up our capacity. I remember when we took the application portal down off our website at 11:59 p.m. The night that we had to take down the applications, December 15th, 2020, we received something like 7 applications from families that were facing eviction in the last minute, which just shows during that time period the need that COVID had caused. Let's go to the next slide, though, because sometimes just hearing from the individuals directly can make such a difference. Beyond very appreciative landlords and property managers who just enjoyed the assistance from a business perspective, the second quote really touched me. It was an individual who's was behind on their rent. Their household was going to lose their home. And at the same time, they had a daughter who was a senior in high school, and she was trying to just concentrate on applying for college and scholarships and hopefully enjoying her senior year of high school, which is what a kid should be doing. And yet her parents were facing the very real threat that after the holidays that they could be losing their home and the stability that was providing. Luckily, through our KEP program, we were able to get them assistance. They were able to stay in their home. Their daughter was able to concentrate on getting her next chapter lined up, and hopefully she's now enjoying a successful start to her college career. And you think about that, you think about how long-term investments and rewards can come from some short-term investment. So with that, I'm going to transition now a little bit to our KERA program with a video that we put together that really tries to capture, again, about 2 minutes, just the world that we live in and how housing and COVID are so intertwined. So sit back and enjoy.
Dear home, thank you for everything you have given us. For the shelter that you provided, which gave space for life lessons. Now, life lessons are coupled with school lessons as bedrooms become classrooms. Housework happens alongside office work because kitchen counters are also desks. And now, community looks a little different. Worship looks a little different. Healthcare looks a little different. But in all, you remain constant. Oh, home, you have provided us shelter.
Hey guys, breakfast.
But more importantly, you have provided us space for love and for life. Your door opens to introduce us to the adventure that awaits in the evening, and it secures the things that mean everything to us. Each turn of the doorknob is a handshake that reaffirms our commitment to each other. Because right now, home means more. And when we return, we enter your familiar embrace to a feeling that is as incredible as it is indescribable. Every Kansan deserves safe, affordable housing. Kansas Housing Resources Corporation is unlocking home.
I think that video certainly says it right when it says that right now home means more. And that's something that we and our team at KHRC really take seriously, again, through partners like you all. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce our director of the KERA program, Jason Fizell, who will share an overview of the background and the successes it's had to date. Jason?
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that overview of KHRC and the COVID-related programs we're offering. I just want to take this time to go into a little bit more detail specifically about the Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance Program, or KERA, as we call it. It was funded through the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, which was signed into law about 11 months ago. So it's been a program that's stood up from, there was nothing in existence like this before in the last 11 months, and we've adapted a lot. It is run through the Department of the Treasury, and I will say that they have been developing the, as with any federal program, I'm sure you've all had experience with some. There are various guidelines and regulations we need to follow, and a lot of these have been developed on the fly, but I will give them credit for saying that they've really adapted as time has gone on and given us more flexibility. So a lot of my presentation will comment on how we've been able to improve and expand the program to help more people. KHRC is the administrator for most of the state's funds. There is a program specifically in Wichita for Wichita residents called WERAP. KERA does also serve Wichita residents if they wish to apply with us, and we just coordinate with WERAP to make sure there's not a duplication of benefits. And then, as I said, we launched our program just about 11 months ago. Next. So really just to get into it a little bit more, it is a rental assistance program primarily for renters and landlords, but we also provide utility assistance and internet assistance to those households experiencing financial hardship. And I will say, and we'll get into this in subsequent slides, originally it had to have been as a result of the COVID pandemic, and Treasury we've been able to loosen those guidelines, and now it just has to have occurred during the COVID pandemic. And the money they provided is available to last through 2025, depending on funding. It is a joint process, again, between tenants and landlords. There has to be that relationship, so we need a lease, and we'll get into that more a little bit later, but it's all done online via our website, which we'll show you. Once the tenant application is approved, then it goes to the landlord and the utility service providers, or I'm sorry, just to the landlord or the property manager to approve those amounts and double check just to make sure everything was entered correctly. And then those funds are paid out directly to the landlord. If there are cases where the landlord refuses or declines to participate, then we do have a process set up where we can pay those tenants directly. And again, eligible households can receive up to 18 months of rental assistance beginning in April of 2021 through to the present, and can apply for up to 3 months of assistance at a time after their original payment is made. Next. So just to get into a little bit more detail, and again, these new updates kind of highlight where some things have changed. It originally was we were able to provide 15 months of assistance, and they've now increased that to 18 months. So we are doing that. We are able to prepay up to 3 months of prospective rent ahead of time. And then once folks are paid out for that, they can come back and recertify if they still have an additional months available to them to get up to their 18 months. That also includes residential home utility, gas, water, sewer, trash, all of those, as well as I mentioned before, internet costs. Those we treat a little bit differently. We're doing what amounts to $50 a month. So now for the 18 months times 50, we'll do a $900 lump sum to be applied to either past due or future internet costs for a household. As we touched on earlier and the videos referenced, it's important for folks to be able to have high-speed internet access at home and be able to do their work and schooling. And then also Treasury has allowed reasonable late fees, security deposits, utility fees, parking fees, other fees, as long as they are included in the rent. And again, this is all as of subsequent to April 1st, 2020. Next. So the criteria that the applicant tenants have to meet. The first, and this is very important, is that they have to rent their home and can provide us a lease documenting that. And that, we'll be honest, it is something that Treasury hasn't loosened up. We still have to have that, but we often are able to work with landlords if the tenant doesn't have a copy of a lease, or do some other self-attestations where folks can document that relationship. Where Treasury also, again, has relaxed guidelines is for documenting income. Previously, folks had to upload a lot of documentation that we then had to review. Now, folks can self-attest to that, as well as their COVID hardship. Previously, folks had to write out kind of what their COVID hardship was, and we had to read that and judge it. And now there's really just check boxes that they, during the application, can check, both for that, as well as for the next, in terms of being uncertain where they may be housed or become homeless if they don't get housing assistance. So again, just check boxes now in the application that tenants can self-attest to. And then finally, just providing proof of identification. And again, we have a lot of flexibility here. We can, official pieces of mail. It's not just an ID, but we can do other official pieces of mail, other examples that we can use to document that. Next slide. So just a big overview, and this one puts a little bit the cart before the horse. I'd actually flip those, although a landlord can apply first. 95% of our applications come in from the tenants up front. They submit their application online and enter their landlord information, and then we reach out and connect their landlord to the application, and again have them double check that everything is entered correctly and that their payment information is provided. We process the application, and then the funds are paid out directly to that landlord or utility provider. As I said earlier, there are exceptions to that. If some landlords just simply don't wish to participate, so Treasury does allow us to pay out to tenants directly in those cases. And this is all done on our website, which we'll come to in a second. Oh, great, and that is next. Thank you, Blair. She's just going to it's all on one page here on keshousingcorp.org, and the banner's at the top, and then there's a link right in the middle there. And Blair, you can go ahead and click through. And it's all on one page, so we can scroll through. We do some introductory information at the top, the video that you just saw. Just kind of a program overview and description. Our metrics, this would be a good time to note, it's going to say 96. We just announced to our staff today with this week's payment, we have surpassed 100 million in assistance out the door to Kansas tenants and landlords, so we're very happy for that. And then we've already gone over the eligibility criteria, so you can keep scrolling there. And then there's the Apply Now button. And what we really wanted to show you here is this partner search. We do have available community partners all across the state to assist folks in completing their application if they do have difficulty with the online application. So I know you all are for Wyandotte and Johnson County. So Blair, if you wouldn't mind just limiting that down to one of them, and we can just show you so that they can reach out. You know, if somebody doesn't have computer access or has difficulty with that or uploading documents, they can contact either of these organizations that will assist that tenant in completing the application. And then I think that was it. Blair, yeah, if you want to show, there are some documents, program guidelines, FAQs that kind of detail the program here. And Blair is going to come back. And then, oh yes, thank you, Blair. Our testimonials, which I'm always very proud of. Blair helps pull these together. They really are wonderful. Ryan showed some testimonials of our KEP program. Later, we'll flash some from our KERA program on the screen, but we really are helping people stay in their houses and make their landlords whole. So we always like to point that out as well. And just back to the slides, I think that's it. Already touched on this, our metrics. Also, not only hit 100 million, we had our biggest week yet, $4.2 million out the door this week. So we're very proud of that. And then here are our testimonials. I won't read them to you. You know, it's just for us, you know, processing applications every day. It's heartening to know the people behind them that are being assisted and the situations that they're in, and what this assistance helps them be able to continue to do, stay in their houses, continue to work and learn from home. So we always just like to share these. Next slide. All right, Blair, I'll turn it over to you to touch on this.
Okay, so I'm going to put a link to this digital toolkit in the chat here in a moment, and it'll also be linked to the PDF of this presentation, which I'll provide to the organizer of this presentation so she can share it all with you. But what you'll see in the digital toolkit is everything from a description of the KERA program to a new outreach presentation we'll put in here. But some of the most effective sheets that you can use are the KERA tenant fact sheets. And these are going to be updated shortly too, with all the new information about 18 months of assistance and new COVID hardship requirement that's a little more expansive. So this is great to just share either by printing out or by sharing digitally in any mailers that you do, like emails or newsletters, even on your websites. So this is a really comprehensive document. It's probably the most helpful one that you can use, but let's go back here. There's also a sample school newsletter. If anyone's involved with school districts, you can also change the name of the school here, and it's already written out in newsletter format to let other families know about the program that may benefit from it. And for social media or any other digital channels that you may have, like I said, your websites or e-newsletters, you can use these photos that we have. And we've got about 5 of them. That's just one example. So you can see those here. And then we also have text blurbs already written out to accompany each photo that you can post on social media or share with others in other formats like your newsletters that will help get the word out. However you get the word out usually with your organization, I would encourage you to use these tools, and they're already there for you. If you want to order any tenant fact sheets, you can email me, just hovering over here, and here's my email. So we can always ship those to you free of charge. And if you want to put them in mailers or anything, we would really appreciate that. We just want to get the word out as much as possible. So you can also, in this PDF, you'll be able to click here to get to the KERA webpage. You'll be able to click here to subscribe to our different mailing lists. We also have the Kansas Homeowner Assistance Fund that'll launch soon. And if you want to get updates on that, you can subscribe to that mailing list or text updates here. Again, here's the link to the digital toolkit. Took me right there. And we would like to open it up to questions if you have any after this video.
Nothing can be more frightening than to be unsure of where you're going to lay your head at night. KERA stands for Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance. A eligible household can receive up to 12 months of rental assistance and home energy costs.
It was a big burden lifted, like, okay, I can do this.
This is a COVID-related hardship, so if you find yourself in that position, I would encourage you to apply. For more information, go to kshousingcorp.org. Every Kansan deserves to have a stable home. Nothing can be.
Okay, so here's our contact information. Again, you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and we'd like to open it up to questions.
I know we threw a lot of information at you, so don't be shy. No questions. Oh, good.
Hi. Hey, how long do you expect the funding to last for this program?
You know, it's I can address that briefly, and then Ryan, if you want to jump in at all, like I said, the statute allows it to run through 2025. I will say Treasury has put out some pretty aggressive timelines for getting funds expended. They want a lot of it expended up front as quickly as we can, as we're able to ramp up the program. So we've been doing the best we can to do that. But there is some intent that it will be longer term than just the immediate future. And like I said, statutorily through September 2025.
That's a great question. I might just piggyback on what Jason responded, just to share that, you know, there's a lot of kind of ongoing conversations, both with our state legislature, with our federal congressional delegation, that, you know, we're honored and thrilled and willing to serve when it comes to all these crises that we find ourselves in, whether that's a pandemic or a tornado or economic peril, whatever the state is facing. But what we're ultimately seeing is a true lack of investment in housing across the board historically. So it's what we're seeing is that every time there's a natural crisis or something else, a housing problem becomes a housing crisis. We have a once in a generation opportunity right now with all the federal dollars available, with the state legislature talking about investments at the state level to really get to the underlying housing problem in the state. And that's the lack of safe, affordable, accessible housing. You know, we've got an old housing stock in the state. We have a lack of contractors available. We just have a great deal of housing needs. So our mission at KHRC is not just to put on the Band-Aids through emergency rental assistance and the other important resources we have, but continue that dialogue of actually addressing the underlying housing problem. And that's developing more low and moderate income housing at all different levels across the state. We think that that's going to be the better long-term approach so that we can really not have so many crises come up time after time. But you know, we do have the resources now for the rental assistance, and we're certainly getting that out the door. A great question.
I noticed on one of your early slides, you had at the very bottom of the slide, it said new, and it was a program for to help with mortgages. Could you just briefly talk about maybe when that?
I'd be happy to take that one as well, team. An excellent question. We last spring, I believe it was, as part of ARPA, the American Rescue Plan, there was funding passed for a national homeowner assistance fund program. It's called HAF, and in Kansas, we're calling it CAF, of course, with the Kansas element. It is a program that has taken a while to get launched for a number of reasons. It required approval from the Department of Treasury and required the state to go through a needs analysis that we submitted to Treasury. So that's been the steps that we've taken this last summer through winter. We submitted the plan in September to Treasury. We got that approved. Actually, just a couple weeks ago, we found out we got it approved. And we have now awarded a contract to what we call a turnkey service provider. We're going to be contracting out the majority of the program administration, keeping some of it in-house. But overall, we've got $56 million available to provide mortgage assistance, to help with utilities, to provide back taxes. We actually have Erin Beckerman, our general counsel, on the call, and she's been heavily involved in kind of setting it up, the legal side of it, because there are some complexities that aren't there with a rental assistance program. Primarily, we're working with out-of-state loan servicers, so we have to have a system that works well. But we've got great partners, from the Kansas Bankers Association to the housing counseling agencies around the state. We've got a team here at KHRC that's spent a great deal of time kind of learning about best practices with the program. Our plan is to tentatively launch in mid-April, and we expect those funds to go relatively fast, but do think the program will be available through most of 2022. So definitely would encourage you all to help us get the word out there that resource is coming, and definitely sign up for our contact list so that when it does launch, we can keep you apprised.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great question. Well, we certainly appreciate you all being interested and engaged, and certainly don't hesitate to reach out to any of us for how we can partner, not just with this program, but I think there's some real opportunity to, we've got mutual clients and missions, and we'd love to work with you all.
Thank you guys for presenting to our organization today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
If I could ask, is there a similar organization on the Missouri side?
There is, and it actually depends on what program specifically that's administering the emergency rental assistance program. The organization would be the equivalent of KHRC in Missouri, called MHDC, the Missouri Housing Development Commission, I believe. But they've got a very similar program. There are actually municipal run programs as well, and I believe Kansas City, Missouri runs their own program. So both the state and the larger urban areas of each state have similar emergency rental assistance programs. And honestly, Jason may know more, but I'm not sure where they're at with getting, I assume they still have dollars available through their programs, but certainly encourage you to reach out to them too.
I'll be sure to send the PDF of these slides to you, Courtney, and then you can send those to whoever would be able to use them.
That would be great. Thank you, Blair.
You're welcome. Thanks for organizing this too.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for taking time today. We appreciate it.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
That's all.
Thank you. Goodbye.